Imagine a farmer who grows wheat on his own land, but when it's time to eat, he has to beg from his neighbor. That's exactly what the most powerful country on earth is doing right now. America, the world's largest oil producer, cannot use its own oil. And that's just one of the 3 secrets we're uncovering today. Because the world you think you understand, it works nothing like you think. Welcome back to Cinematics Truth, where we don't just tell stories, we tell the truth behind them. Did you know that right now, at this very moment, there are approximately 3 million ships sailing across the world's oceans? Oil tankers, LPG carriers, LNG vessels, passenger ships, and above all, container ships. Around 90% of global trade happens through sea routes. Every single minute, 6,000 to 8,000 container ships are cutting through ocean waters somewhere on this planet. And thanks to automatic identification systems, every one of them can be tracked in real time. If you visit websites like Marine Traffic or Vessel Finder, you'll see the entire ocean lit up with tiny moving lights, and every single one of those lights is a massive ship carrying millions of dollars worth of cargo on its deck. Most of these ships are running a route you already know, out of China, into the United States, into Europe. The average container ship carries around 5,000 containers, and almost everything you own, your phone, your clothes, your furniture, at some point made a journey inside one of those metal boxes. On the surface, everything looks normal. Goods come in, empty containers go back, trade continues. Simple, balanced. But the truth is far more shocking than that, because the world's trade balance is not balanced at all. It is completely falling apart. China sells so much to the world that it floods every shipping lane with full containers. In 2023 alone, China's trade surplus was $823 billion. That means China exported $3,380 billion worth of goods and only imported $2,557 billion worth in return. That difference, those hundreds of billions, traveled inside containers across every ocean. And that's where the problem begins. When those containers arrive in the United States, they come full. But what goes back? The United States is the world's largest consumer nation. It imports far more than it exports, which means far more containers are coming in than going out. Only 40% of the containers that arrive at American ports leave full. So the question is, what happens to the other 60%? You might assume they just go back empty, but they don't. Those containers are rotting in fields and lots across the United States, stacking up at ports, sitting in the sun going nowhere, because sending an empty container back to China costs around $3,000. And here's the thing, China can manufacture a brand new container for just $2,000. So why would China pay $3,000 to get back an empty box when they can just build a new one for less? Every year, 2.5 million brand new containers are manufactured. The old ones, America and Europe are stuck with them. Some of these containers get sold cheap for storage or converted into offices and homes. Container architecture is actually a growing trend now. When there's nothing left to do with them, they get melted down for steel. Each container holds about 2 tons of it. Next time you pass a port and see mountains of steel containers stacked on top of each other, remember, that's not just scrap metal. That is the physical evidence of a world economy quietly breaking down. Now we come to the question that stumps even the greatest economic minds. The United States is currently the #1 oil producer on the planet, ahead of Saudi Arabia, ahead of Russia. And yet, despite producing more oil than any other country on Earth, the United States is also the 2nd largest oil importer in the world. It sells its own oil abroad and buys someone else's oil for itself. How does that even make sense? The oil that comes out of American soil is called light crude oil. It's thin, low viscosity, and flows easily. The problem is that America's refineries were not built for this kind of oil. These refineries were constructed decades ago, during a time when the United States was receiving thick, heavy crude oil from Mexico and Venezuela. The entire infrastructure was designed around heavy crude. So, if America wants to refine its own light oil today, it would have to overhaul the entire refining system, a cost so enormous that it simply isn't worth it. Instead, America exports its light oil to countries that can process it and imports cheap, heavy crude from outside, because even after buying foreign oil, it's still more economical than rebuilding the refinery system from scratch. But the chemistry of oil is only part of the story. The second reason is a logistics nightmare. America's oil is not where America's refineries are. Texas is swimming in oil, but to move that oil to refineries on the East Coast or to New York, the pipeline infrastructure simply doesn't exist across the whole country. California is practically an island when it comes to oil supply. No pipelines reach it, so California is forced to import oil from foreign countries even though it sits in the same nation as Texas. And then there's the law that was supposed to save America, but is slowly destroying it from within. It's called the Jones Act. During World War I, America didn't have enough ships to carry its own soldiers and equipment across the ocean. It had to rely on ships from allied nations. Military planners realized this was a dangerous weakness. If America's allies were ever unavailable, the entire logistics of war would collapse. The solution was to build a strong American merchant fleet, ships that moved cargo in peacetime but could convert to military use in wartime. Senator Wesley Jones introduced the legislation that made this possible. The Jones Act required that any goods transported between two American ports must be carried on ships that are American-built, American-owned, and crewed by Americans. Sounds reasonable, except building a ship in America costs 3 times more than building one in China. American sailors earn significantly higher wages. The result is that there are barely enough American ships to move oil from Texas to New York, and the ones that do exist charge rates so high that the cost of shipping oil by sea within America goes up by $5 per barrel. American refiners run the numbers and realize it's cheaper to skip their own oil entirely and just order from a foreign country. A law written to protect America is now one of the quiet forces consuming it from within. These are the real reasons why the world's largest oil producer still needs everyone else. And beyond America's needs, there's Iran, a country that has lived under crushing American sanctions for years. Iran cannot buy or sell anything involving the United States or its allies. American planes, American technology, American financial systems, all completely off limits. And yet, in 2024, 5 Boeing 777 aircraft suddenly appeared in Iran Air's fleet. American planes, in a country that cannot legally touch anything American. The world was stunned. So how did Iran pull it off? It started in the desert. In Alice Springs, Australia, there is a massive aircraft boneyard, a graveyard of retired planes sitting in the dry heat, too old to fly commercially, waiting to be sold for parts or scrapped. Iran spotted 5 retired Singapore Airlines Boeing 777s sitting there. Perfect condition, excellent airframes, and completely unobtainable because any direct purchase involving Iran would trigger immediate American sanctions. So, Iran built a shadow operation. A company called Ion Aviation was set up. It looked legitimate on paper. Ion Aviation purchased the 5 aircraft. The planes were then moved to China. From China, they were transferred to a completely fictitious company called Odin Aviation, registered under the flag of Madagascar. Odin Aviation did not exist in any real sense. It existed only as documents, designed purely to vanish from American regulatory sight. Once the planes were registered under a Malagasy flag, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration lost all jurisdiction. The trail had gone cold. The planes were then flown to Cambodia, a country where aviation oversight is notoriously relaxed. In Cambodia, the aircraft were repainted, re-registered, and hidden from the world's tracking systems. Everything was being repositioned for the final move. In July 2025, all 5 aircraft filed flight plans from Cambodia to Kenya. The stated reason was routine maintenance. Nothing alarming. Planes go to Kenya for maintenance all the time. But the moment those aircraft entered Afghanistan airspace, where Taliban air traffic surveillance is extremely weak, they switched off their transponders. They disappeared from radar entirely, and instead of continuing to Kenya, they changed course completely, splitting up and landing in different Iranian cities. Chabahar, those 5 Boeing 777s were already part of Iran Air's operational fleet. They were flying passengers, they were crossing international airspace, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Here's why. The Chicago Convention, the foundational international agreement governing aviation, states that unless 2 countries are in active state of war, no nation can prevent civilian aircraft from using their airspace or deny them landing rights for normal airline operations. Iran Air is a civilian airline. Its planes are civilian aircraft. The moment those Boeings were registered under another flag and transferred to Iranian operations, they entered a legal gray zone that international law simply wasn't built to handle. And the leverage runs both ways. If Europe or any American ally tried to ban Iranian aircraft from their airspace, Iran could immediately close its own airspace to flights traveling between the Middle East and Europe. Those routes would be devastating. Flight times would increase by hours, airlines would lose billions. Nobody wants that outcome, which means everyone stays quiet, and Iran keeps flying American planes that it was never supposed to have. This is the world we actually live in. Containers rotting in American fields because China builds them cheaper than it costs to ship them back. The most oil-rich nation on Earth buying foreign oil because its own laws and old refineries make using its own supply too expensive.